Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to finally the practical. Which one do you actually start with? The tactical. I hope you are now understanding why it was so important for us to actually layer on your learning, because before we can actually get into the action step, we had to help you understand, hey, what are the legal entities that are existing? What is the purpose of a sole prop? What is the purpose of a corporation? How does an LLC work? If you didn't have those layers of understanding, it would be impossible for us to even have a conversation, because we wouldn't even be agreeing on the terms. You and I would not be able to have a conversation on, hey, when we say do an LLC, well, the question you'd ask is, why an LLC? Why not do something else? Well, now you know, right? Because you've gone through all of those foundational trainings. The other thing that's very important as we dive into the practical here is that we completely understand, and we have actually designed this course because we understand that many of those who are starting businesses out are trying to do things as efficiently, and oftentimes, because you're a startup, you're not trying to go out there and hire a bunch of lawyers and have like some sophisticated legal entity with like a holding company and then doing this and that and all the fancy stuff that you can do when you're making large sums of money in your business later on, right? So you're doing it a lot more cheaply in the beginning. So don't worry. Everyone has been in that situation when they were getting started out. We were in that situation when we were starting out. And so when we first started out, we were making sure that we were doing everything as cheap and as easy as possible, because especially in the beginning, the most important thing to be focusing on in the business is, hey, let me just get the bare bones infrastructure in place so I can then go focus on the marketing and the sales and the actual making of the money. And then you can then level your income up and then start to focus on more advanced strategy. So everything that we have broken down in the upcoming scenarios that we're going to go ahead and talk about right now is to make it so that way it is as easy as possible, so that way there is no excuse for anyone to say, hey, you know what, I got stuck or I couldn't get set up or anything like that, okay? So what we're going to go ahead and do right now is I want to go ahead and make sure that we're clear on the training disclaimer as well. We are holding companies, any of our DBAs, we are not providing with all these scenarios tax, legal, or accounting advice, okay? We're just going to be giving you the scenarios of what we would do in that situation, but we are not tax, legal, or accounting professionals, okay? And so all we're doing is that we're educating you so that way when you do go out there and talk to the tax and legal professionals, you actually know what it is that you are talking about and you can ask the right questions, so that way you are empowered and you are your own advocate, okay? And so let's talk about what the actual process might look like as you are thinking through this situation. Because here's the truth, and this is why it's a little bit difficult for beginners and new business owners, is that everyone's situation is going to be different as they come into this, okay? And so what our job here is to provide just general information on the different paths that exist. And so this is what an example of kind of thinking through the process might actually look like, right? So I might start off and thinking with my first thought, you know what? Maybe nothing is needed from me right now, right? So right now, I might not want to deal with any of this really. You know, I'm just learning, I'm just testing, I'm just practicing maybe for the first 6 months of my business. I don't really plan on getting any paid clients right now, right? So you know what? I'm just going to work with some practice clients. So in this case, you know what? Let me think about this. I might actually be good. There might not actually be nothing for me to do, right? Because I can go out there and have fun. I don't got to have an LLC. I don't got to have a business bank account, because of the fact that, you know what? I'm just kind of testing around and dabbling. And even if I do get clients, it's going to be practice clients for me to just go ahead and practice my skills with. Some of you may fall into that circumstance or in that situation, right? Well, hey, here's a second thought, right? This is the kind of the option of a sole prop, but a business bank account. But on second thought, you know what? I might actually want to bring in some paid clients over the next couple months, right? And if that's the case, then maybe because I'm already a sole prop by default, right? Because the government already makes us a sole prop as soon as you make your first dollar, because we talked about that before. And because there's no fees or paperwork needed, then you know what? I can just start accepting money right away, and I can start getting tax write-offs. And then when it comes tax time, I'll just have to fill out an extra form, which is called a Schedule C, to let the government know that, hey, you know what? I brought in this much revenue and this is how many expenses that I had, and that's it. And then for the business bank account, right? The thing is that with the business bank account, if I even bring in just one paid client, things are going to start to get messy with my personal bank account, right? Because then I can't actually keep my business revenue and my personal money separate, right? And so because of that, and because I'm just a sole prop and I'm just kind of maybe have one paid client here and there, I might want to go ahead and actually open up a business bank account, which is perfectly okay, because as a sole prop, I can actually open up a business bank account, which I'm completely allowed to do. And right now, remember, we're just thinking out loud here. I might not actually need an LLC right now because you know what? I'm only dabbling. I only have a few clients, right? My liability is very low because I only have like 2-3 clients. It's not like I'm going to get sued, right? And I don't think I'm going to be able to get to that $25,000 in the next year. So because of that, you know what? For me, if this was my circumstance and if this was how I was thinking through it, then a sole prop, but having a business bank account might actually be better for me. Are you starting to see, let me kind of break frame here so you can kind of understand. Are you starting to see some of the different factors that somebody would consider based off of their individual situation? And that's one of the most difficult things for us when we make trainings is we don't know, right? Because this is not me talking to you live right now to ask you a bunch of questions to know your situation. And so what we have to do is we have to design these trainings in a way that's going to be applicable to the most number of people. And this specific topic is probably the reason why a lot of educators, course creators, they find it difficult to be able to talk to people about, but we found a way, because we're giving you these kind of prompts or these scenarios, to be able to go ahead and make it applicable so that way you are empowered to make the decision that is going to be best for you. So this might be my second thought, right? Let's talk about the third thought that might be applicable to some people, right? Which is, let's say, liability protection, right? So, you might start thinking, but what if I start to actually get more than just a few clients? What if I end up getting sued, right? Well, here's the thing. If I'm a sole prop, and like we talked about in the previous foundational training, all the liability is on me because I am the business, right? So you know what? On second thought, you know what? I might want to have some more protection. So even though it is going to cost me $300 to $800 every year for that filing cost on the LLC, you know what? It might actually be worth it for me to go ahead and just get a standard LLC. I'm not going to do a tax selection, right? So even though I know it won't save me on taxes right now because, you know, I'm only going to be making, let's say, $25,000 a year with these extra clients, right? But just the liability protection, maybe for me, I'm just thinking out loud here, might be enough for me to justify that $300 or $800 yearly expense cost for me. That might be something that for some of you, that might be the situation and the thought process that you're in, right? Maybe the fourth thought over here. Okay, let me clear this out so you can see. The fourth thought, hey, you know what? Other than me being worried about being sued, I like knowing that if I am a standard LLC, and that if things go really well all of a sudden in the year and I start really kind of getting to the point where I'm making $5,000 to $10,000 per month, that you know what? I can then backdate and retroactively convert my standard LLC with a LLC S tax election and save thousands in taxes. I like knowing that if I start off with that standard LLC, yes, you know what? It's going to cost me that $300 to $800 every single year, but I like knowing that if things go very well, then I can go ahead and save thousands of dollars in taxes if I get to that $50,000, $75,000 a year mark, right? Which is about $5,000 to $10,000 a month. And so even though I know that saving thousands in taxes will only happen once I'm really making enough income in my business, again, $5,000 to $10,000 per month, to offset that additional expenses and complexity of an LLC with S Corp tax selection, I'm willing to be able to pay the $300 to $800 per year to keep my LLC open, because based on my goals for myself and how much revenue I know that I will bring in over the next year, for me, it might actually be worth it, okay? And so I hope you're seeing by all of these different examples and all of these different thought processes, this is what the different thoughts and kind of variables that you need to be thinking about as you're going to be making this decision, okay? So what we've gone ahead and done is we've gone ahead and simplified all of this thinking that I'm showing you here on the screen right now, and we've simplified that into 3 options, okay? And that's exactly what I'm going to be walking you through right now, is exactly what those 3 potential options could look like. Now, based off of our vantage point, we couldn't think of what option 4 or 5 might be. If you do end up coming up with like, hey, you know what? My situation might be different. Hey, you know what? I'm not sure if what I should do in this specific circumstance. Then obviously that's the reason why we built this program as a community-based program, because of the fact that there are going to be other people in this program, new business owners, people who are on the same journey as you, who might have the answer to this. So that's the reason why you can go ahead and ask inside of the community. But for the purposes of where you are right now, and most likely your current level of income, but again, remember, we don't know. Somebody might come into this program like, hey, you know what? I already have clients. I'm already making $10,000 a month, XYZ, right? Which one of these options is going to be good for you. But if you're like, hey, I'm coming to this program, I'm already making $30,000 a month, then hey, maybe there is an option 4. But for most people, the 3 options are going to be, number 1, you can start off as a sole prop with no business bank account. Okay, that's what biz bank means, no business bank account, and then evaluate. Option number 2, you can start as a sole prop with a business bank account and then evaluate. Or option number 3 is you can start an LLC, okay, and then you can go ahead and file for an S tax selection once you're at around $5,000 to $10,000 a month consistently. Okay, so here's a visual representation of that. Option 1, option 2, and then option 3 is kind of like a transition here, right? So you start off as a normal LLC, no tax election, and then once you're at around $5,000 to $10,000 a month in monthly revenue, or $50,000 to $100,000 a year in annual revenue, you would then go ahead and get that LLC S Corp tax election. Okay, so here's what it looks like on a table format, and let me go ahead and explain this a little bit more, so that way all of us are on the same page with this. Okay, so option number 1, again, start sole prop, no business bank account, then evaluate. Where would this option apply? If you are for sure that there is no money in the picture, right? Meaning that you are not going to be collecting any money from clients. All you're doing right now is just testing, practicing, exploring, right? You're just looking to test with practice clients, not looking to get any paid clients for right now, right? If you are in that test and practice and learning mode for the next 6 to 12 months, then option 1 is going to be the option for you. Now, why not do this option? The reason why some people may not want to do this option is because as soon as any incoming money comes into the picture, this option becomes extremely messy. Because when you start collecting money, where is that money going to go, right? It's going to go into your personal bank account. And then you don't have separation between your personal and your business revenue. That is where this option becomes extremely messy. And so that is why this option is only good if there is no money in the picture. Okay, I hope that's clear. Let's now talk about option number 2. Option number 2 is where you start a sole prop with a business bank account and then evaluate. When is this good? It's as soon as money's in the picture, but you know what? You're like, you know what? I'm going to get a couple paying clients. Maybe let's say 1 to 3 paying clients. I'm just dabbling towards getting 1 to 3 paying clients for the next 12 months only, right? Now, when would this not be an option? Here's the thing. As soon as you start getting more than 1 to 3 paying clients and you plan on now getting, let's say 10 or 20 paying clients, what happens is you now risk the audit, right? So the risk of audit goes up because once you start making past $20,000 to $50,000 a year, then even the IRS is a little bit suspicious of somebody making that much money as a sole prop, right? And if you're kind of scaling to, let's say, past $50,000 a year, you might as well just get an LLC because then you can save on taxes because it's going to be coming down the road. Plus, if you see yourself getting to $50,000 a year, you might as well just go with option 3 because you know, if you're going to start a business bank account here with this option, if you start an LLC, you're going to have to make a new bank account, which can be annoying to switch, right? And so that might be a reason why you might not want to do this option. But for those of you who are like, you know what, I'm just going to be doing this on the side. I'm really not going to exceed $25,000, $50,000, $75,000 a year for sure. I'm just kind of dabbling here on the side, but I like being able to have the option to collect money. Then having the business bank account with the sole prop would be a good option. Now, option 3, and this is, again, I don't know if this is going to be the majority of people, but I can see this being a very, very realistic option for a lot of people, which is, hey, start an LLC, okay? And you say, you know what? I want the liability and protection from the very beginning, right? That would be somebody who's like, yeah, that's what I want to do with option number 3. And they're okay with spending $300 to $800 a year in order to get the LLC paperwork filed with the state, okay? And they like knowing that if they get past $5,000 to $10,000 per year consistently within the next year, then they can go ahead and save money on that self-employment tax with that retroactive S Corp tax election. Okay, now, why might not this be a good option for some people? Okay, because there is more paperwork and it does have costs associated with this option compared to the sole prop, right? For the sole prop, I mean, you're just opening a bank account. It's pretty much free to get started. There's nothing there, right? There is a cost involved there. And so if you only plan on dabbling with, let's say, 1 to 3 clients max, you know what? Liability really isn't going to be that big of a kind of concern, right? Because unless you're a terrible human being and you just like, you know, just like totally mess with your clients in terrible ways, if you just have that low level of kind of clients, you're not going to have that much liability. And it might not actually be worth it for you to have all these extra costs if you don't have that many more clients, right? But if you're like, you know what? I'm probably going to have maybe more than 20,000 and I'm going to start off with the LLC. My only cost is going to be $300 to $800 a year. And then once I get past $50,000 a month, I can then go ahead and actually get that S Corp tax election, which again come with some additional costs because you have a second tax return. But again, that is option number 3. So again, just to make it very, very clear, because I know sometimes it can be confusing with all that LLC talk that we have done, okay? The only reasons that you would really open an LLC and pay $300 to $800 a year is either for liability protection, because it is a corporation. We've talked about this in a previous training, okay? And or to save on self-employment tax, which is only applicable once you hit $5,000 to $10,000 a month consistently, and then actually upgrade to that S Corp tax election. So these are the 3 options that we've talked about. Now, even with this, I can see that there's going to be a lot of new business owners who might still struggle with, hey, I'm not 100% sure which option I should go with. So let's go ahead and now give you some scenarios of what we would do based off of the different circumstances. Okay, so scenario numero uno, scenario number one is testing and practicing. Okay, if you are just testing and practicing, then what you do is you start off with a sole prop, which is no business bank account, and just learn. Okay, that's option number one that we talked about. Is if I knew that I was just going to have test and practice clients, no paid clients for the next 3 to 6 months, and I'm just dabbling, and then on the side I'm just exploring, right? I would then go ahead and start a sole prop with no business bank account. And then after 3 or 6 months, I would evaluate and see, hey, where am I? How did I do in terms of, how much progress I thought I was going to make? And then I can either move to option number two, if I think, I might still only be dabbling, but just dabbling with some paid clients. Or I might decide, enough of this dabbling, enough of only having practice clients. I'm now going to go ahead and move on to the LLC. Okay. So that would be what you do after 3 to 6 months, but that is scenario number one. Then from there, scenario number two is if you have no previous business experience, you have limited funds, and you're doing this on the side. In this case, you might start off as a sole prop with a business bank account for your first, let's say in our case, we would say, we do it for our first 1 to 3 paid customers, because personally, the chances of me, the way that I know how I deal with clients, of me getting sued when I only have 3 customers is not very high unless I'm a terrible human being, right? And so the chances for me personally, I would be okay with those and saying, I don't need an LLC for that liability protection. And so with the sole prop with business bank account on my 1 to first 3 clients, I would then be able to get my tax write-offs. I could use my social security number to go ahead and open up a business bank account. So that way I don't have to worry about, having to get an EIN or something like that. And so this option would be cheap, simple, easy, and I can do everything an LLC can do, but I don't actually have to file an LLC, right? And then I've proven to myself that I can do this, and I'm just starting to get the idea of how all of this works. This would be scenario two. And then after I have my 1 to 3 paid clients, I would then go ahead and get an LLC, right? So once I'm getting some more traction, I'm getting some more momentum, then I would go ahead and say, it's worth for me to pay that $300 to $800 to get my LLC created and then also get an EIN number for that. But here's the thing. Once I get that EIN number, I'd have to go to the bank and open another bank account and redo my entire setup because I have to now get that business bank account with the EIN number, right? So it's different than me getting in a business bank account with my social security number, right? So yes, there is more work to do because I have to redo my entire system with my bank account. But you know what? In scenario two, I wasn't sure how long it was really going to even take me to get my first 1 to 3 paying customers. And so because of that, I'm willing to put in that additional work because in this case, I had limited funds anyways. I was doing this on the side. I wanted to see what the traction was going to look like. Okay. So that is where scenario two would apply in terms of this different conditions of what I would think about if I was doing option number two with scenario two. Okay. Now scenarios 3, 4, and 5. Let's go ahead and talk about that. If I was in the situation in which I had previous business experience and I had more funds, okay, that's scenario 3. Or if I was in scenario 4 in which I was worried about liability and I already had the funds, okay? Or scenario number 5 in which I was certain that I could get 1 to 3 paying clients in the next 3 to 6 months and 10 plus clients in the next 12 months, not test or practice clients, okay? And honestly, there's a kind of a scenario 6 there as well, which is maybe I'm coming into this and maybe you are in this situation where you're in business basics, you've actually had clients before and you have already been going through this, but you didn't know any of this existed. If that is scenario 6, then this is what would apply for me as well, okay? What I would do, I would start off with an LLC off the bat, so that way I wouldn't have to worry about opening up another business bank account later on. I just have it from the beginning. And then I would file for an S Corp tax selection. That's a form, right? Once I get my LLC past around $5,000 to $10,000 a month in income, which I'm starting to get to about, let's say, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 a year in annual revenue, right? So once I get to $50,000 to $100,000 in yearly revenue, I would then run the numbers myself and with a tax professional to see if it would be worth it for me to go ahead and do that S Corp tax selection. Because remember, when you do that S Corp tax selection, you now got to file another tax return because now you have separated yourself from the entity versus when you're a standard LLC, right? In which you haven't filed that form yet, it's just one tax return. That's it, right? And so I would run the numbers to see, based off of how much yearly revenue I have done, based off of my expenses, all that kind of stuff, is it worth for me with the payroll expenses and the additional fees for the additional tax return for me to go ahead and do that? However, I would still start off with that LLC. If these were the scenarios that I was going with, then I would go ahead and proceed with option number 3. Does that make sense, ladies and gentlemen? We're just going ahead and tackling this from as many different places as possible so you can think through this for your specific situation, okay? So here's another visual, okay? Again, you're seeing we're making as much effort as we can to provide you as much value as possible so you can see this from different angles and really make a sure decision about which option to go through, right? So scenario, right? If this is my scenario, I would go with option number 1. If this was my scenario, dabbling on the side, focus on getting my first 1 to 3 paid clients for the next 6 to 12 months, I would go with option 2, okay? If this was my scenario, right? I had previous business experience, I had previous sales experience, I had previous clients, I might even currently have clients, okay? I'm worried about liability. I have $300 to $800 every single year. I'm certain that I'm going to get 1 to 3 paid clients in the next 3 to 6 months. I'm for sure going to be able to get 10 paid clients in the next 12 months, not test or practice clients, actual full paying clients. I would then go with option number 3. I hope that is absolutely clear. And the reason why this is so important to have absolutely clear before you move on to the next training section is because what we're going to be doing in the next training section is we're actually going to be walking you through the tactical step-by-step of, hey, if you went with option 1, this is what you're going to be doing. If you went with option 2, this is what you're going to be doing. If you went with option 3, this is what you're going to be doing. And so you do not want to move on from this training step, okay? You don't want to move on from this training section until you are absolutely clear as to what option you're going to move forward with. And here's the thing. If you have questions, ask in the community. Again, this is the reason why we've built this as a community program. And hey, if you are a pro at this, maybe you have some previous business experience, go out there and help others in the community who have questions on this as well, because you might be a pro at this, but there's going to be something inevitably, because in business, we all have deficits. There's going to be something that you're going to need help with. And so when you give that help to others, then you're going to be able to receive that help in the future for something else. Okay. So 100% clear. You got to be very, very, very sure about, hey, what is the decision I'm going to be going with? Because in the next training section, we're going to be walking you through the step-by-step for the actual action steps for each of those. Okay. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I told you, we're now in the practical. It's like, hey, what is my specific situation? No more la la land, theoretical, foundational concepts. You got the foundational understanding now. We're moving to the practical. Which one to start with? Make sure you are absolutely clear with your option. We will catch you in the next training section.